I've just been notified that we are live streaming on the New Mexico NM Courts YouTube channel.
Thanks, Karen. And it looks like we're trying to also include folks from the Supreme Court conference room. Is that right? Are we waiting on that?
Yes, 3 people should be a part of that team.
Who are we expecting there?
Chief Justice Bacon, there she is, Artie Pepin, and Director of AOC, and Jen Albright, Deputy Director of AOC.
We had a technology problem here just a minute ago, so Artie and Jen should be joining us in just a second.
Thank you.
I had some technical issues too, so.
Fine. That's good. There's the video. Karen, can you hear me? Okay, good. Oh yeah, my head, half my head's missing. I see Dean Carey, where I guess we're waiting for a few more members.
Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I don't believe we've met before.
I don't think so.
Chief Justice Bacon is joining. We had problems with we're in the conference room that should have been able to have a bunch of us join together, but it's having problems. So we're joining individually off of our laptops. So you should be seeing Chief Justice Bacon and I believe Justice Thompson on their computer.
I'm here. Justice Thompson's not attending, just me.
Oh, he's not. Okay. Chief, I think we're still waiting for some, at least one more members to join.
No,
Nope.
I just received a message from Ms. Seligman that she had a last minute emergency appointment and she is unable to join today's meeting.
Okay.
So I think we're all here then, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get started. Greetings, everyone. Hello. Welcome. This is my first meeting of the Judicial Compensation Commission. I'm Camille Carey. I am the new dean of the UNM School of Law, and I'm very excited to work with all of you in this capacity. We have some new folks joining the commission for this year. So let's start off with introductions. Please introduce yourself, and if you were appointed by someone to this commission, please say who you were appointed by. Patrick, can we start with you?
Yes, welcome, Dean Carey. My name is Patrick Ortiz. I'm a retired attorney in Santa Fe, and I was appointed by then Chief Justice Michael V. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Ms. Wolf?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Wolf. I'm the current president of the State Bar, and I'm on this commission by statute.
Mr. Flores?
Hello, I'm Adam Flores. I am a civil rights attorney in Albuquerque, and I'm the governor's appointee.
Thank you. Representative Eli?
Hi, Dean. I'm Damon Eli. I'm a representative. I was appointed by Speaker Brian Egoff.
Thank you. Chief Justice?
Good morning, everyone. I am not a member technically, but I am certainly here with keen interest as to the work of the commission. Appointed by myself, but not really.
Mr. Pepin?
Sorry, I had a trouble unmuting there for a second. I'm Artie Pepin, Director of the Administrative Office of the Courts. By the statute that creates the commission, I am staff to the commission. So I'm here to try to be of whatever assistance I can, along with Deputy Director of the AOC, Jen Albright, and Karen Ebler, who is my administrative assistant. And if everything works well, it's because she knows what she's doing.
Great, thank you. Ms. Albright, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry.
Are you in the same room?
I'm in the same room, but I'm having computer issues. So
What did I do?
hold on, already
I
just.
hit the wrong button.
I'm Jennifer Albright. I'm the Deputy Director of the AOC. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Ebler?
My name is Karen Ebler. I'm with the Administrative Office of the Courts, and I am a support staff to the JCC.
And how about Ms. Keith?
Hi, good morning. My name is Ann Keith, and I'm General Counsel to the Chief Justice.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So one friendly amendment to the agenda. We had some minutes from the last meeting that needed to be approved. And since there has been so much turnover in terms of representation on this commission, Ms. Ebler handled it by email. So those are minutes from the October 5th, 2021 meeting. Mr. Patrick Ortiz, Ms. Deborah Seligman made a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Patrick Ortiz seconded the motion, and a roll call vote was taken by email. All voted in favor with no opposition and no abstentions. So the motion passed unanimously. So just a little housekeeping there on the minutes. Anything anyone would like to add on that?
Dean, going forward, when
Yes.
we have the last meeting, which generally happens in that time frame, October, we'll send the minutes out, and if it's all right with you, if it's all right with the commission, we'll do an electronic vote on it, because normally that's a very small, short meeting just to say, yes, this is the final, let's go with it, version of the report, instead of letting it carry over to the next year, because you will have, well, it's not unusual to have turnover. So if that's all right with you, that's the process we'll follow this year and hereafter.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Yes.
I just wanted to say that I did upload the meeting minutes to the shared drive for review if anybody wants to take a look at them. The second thing is, if you have a Gmail account, if you could send that to me. I think many members are already on the shared drive, but if you have a Gmail account, unfortunately, the shared drive is only accessible through a Gmail account. And I will add your email, and you will be able to view the meeting materials.
Thank you, Ms. Ebler. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you much for serving on the commission. And our next agenda item is for Mr. Pepin to report on legislative action during the 2022 regular legislative session.
Thank you, Dean. So on the shared drive, you all had posted the previous 2021 report by the Judicial Compensation Commission. And I posted a memo I wrote for our budget committee, which I hope was enlightening about what happened. It was a little bit more complicated than it normally is with the legislative session this year. The commission had recommended that district judge salary be brought to $165,000. That's a longstanding target the commission had been pursuing. That requires, because of the statute, the way pay is set by statute in 34-1-9, that the justice salary be about $183,000. And that was the recommendation of the commission. So the commission also recognized that by the time the report was finalized, the Supreme Court had submitted a budget request to set justice pay at the pay of a federal magistrate judge. At the time, their budget was submitted, that was $201,112. By the time the legislature came around, it was $205,000. But either way, by statute, set it that way. So the commission in its final report said that that would be a fine idea, and that bringing district court judge pay up above $180,000 would be good for recruitment and retention. But that hadn't been the initial recommendation. So the commission essentially endorsed the budget request that the Supreme Court had made. Fast forward to January, we get into the session, and fun things happened. In the end, I sent this some excerpts of I put that in the share drive, actually Karen did, and I tried to highlight what happened. Between this memo and the statutory excerpts, that provides the substance of what happened, but it's easier just to say what happened. So in section 8 of House Bill 2, that's generally where, oh, thank you, Karen. Yes, you also sent them my email in case you didn't have the Gmail access. That's where compensation increases are provided. So state employees get a raise. It's going to be in section 8 of House Bill 2. So with regard to judges in section 8, the legislature did two interesting things. Well, several interesting things. But basically they said, we're going to put a 7% increase in section 8 for judges. They did 3% in April of 2022. So that was actually fiscal year 22, and 4% now, so that it'll come into the paycheck judges receive on July 29th. But overall, a 7% increase. In the employee increase section, where there's also 7%, the legislature put the magistrate judges. They excluded them from the judge, non-magistrate judge increase, and they separately provided a 7% increase for magistrate judges. The reason for that is in taking district court judge pay to the target that the commission has set, or justice pay to the target the Supreme Court had set, it was universally felt that would raise magistrate pay too high under the existing statutory provisions of 34-1-9. The statute requires that magistrates be paid 75% of what a Metropolitan Court judge is paid. And anyway, the 7% increase would have brought magistrates to 105,000, and that's what was provided for in section 8. So far, so good. In section 4, which is the base budgets of all the courts, that's where general fund appropriations for recurring monies are provided. The legislature put another 10% increase for all the non-magistrate judges. So they funded 10% in section 4 for all not magistrates, in addition to the 7% that magistrates and other judges got in section 8. So now the district judges are up 17%. That just about hits the original target the commission had set last year. I think it brings the district judges to about 163, and it sets the Supreme Court at 181,000. Then the legislature also passed House Bill 68, which did a lot of, Senate Bill 2, not House Bill 68, that's different. In Senate Bill 2, the legislature did two really important things with regard to judicial salaries. They formally removed the magistrates from the statute that has those percentage step downs so that the magistrates would get 75% of what the Metro judges got. So they removed them from the statute. And then they they set judicial pay at the federal magistrate level. They put the money for that in a note and an appropriation in the AOC's appropriation in section 4 of House Bill 2. So it says in there, as you can see, I think that's the first thing I put in the attachment, $3,500,000 for statewide judicial compensation for districts, statewide judges, and Metropolitan Court judges, omitting magistrate judges. So that would have brought justice pay to 185,000, would have brought the district judges to over 180,000. It would have left the magistrates at 105,000, and that was all well and good. The governor vetoed Senate Bill 2, which had the effect, among other things, of vetoing taking the magistrates out of the pay statute, and it vetoed the increase between the 17% that had been otherwise appropriated for judges and the 205,000, which is roughly another 17%. So that got taken out. So now what we ended up with after all of that is a 17% increase for all judges, the justices, Court of Appeals, District Court, and Metropolitan Court. And because the statutory change was not effective, magistrate judges as well. So magistrate judges, instead of getting the 105,000 that they would have had with the 7%, are raised to 116,500. And that's the effect. Now, the commission probably won't be impacted, care about this, but the difference between the 7% the magistrates got and the 17% they ended up with a veto was not funded anywhere, because the legislature thought they were taking care of the magistrates at 7% and everybody else at more. So we have problems with funding the magistrate 10% increase, but it's statutory, so we're figuring it out. So that's what happened. Oh, one other thing that happened in the legislative session was that in House Bill 2, in section 10, where special appropriations, special unique appropriations are made, the legislature provided $20 million as one-time funding into judicial retirement, which we understood and the legislature certainly wanted to go into the Judicial Retirement Fund. There are two retirement funds for judges. One is for the magistrates, and one is for all the not magistrates. And so the Judicial Retirement Fund got an infusion of $20 million. It'll be very interesting to see how that works out over the next year or so. It can only help. Both funds are in the low 50s in terms of their percentage of funding. They're funded at a lower percentage than any other retirement funds. On the other hand, they're very small funds. The magistrate fund is about 90 million. The judicial fund is about 120 million. They're very small, so you can fix them by putting $20 million in. It really helps. But in any event, we'll have to see how that works out. The commission has at times made recommendations on retirement as part of the overall compensation package that is the charge of the commission on judicial compensation. The other thing that was in Senate Bill 2 that didn't become effective because of the governor's veto was that the magistrates would have been moved into PERA for retirement, like state workers, and they would have eliminated the magistrate retirement fund, and the assets of that fund would have gone to the PERA. So another 100 million into PERA to its 14 or $16 billion fund, but that didn't happen either. So we still have the magistrate retirement fund for magistrates. So all of that is what happened during the legislative session, and it is fairly complicated. If I've confused matters, that wouldn't be surprising. So, Madam Chair, before I move on to anything else, maybe if you want, I would be happy to answer questions about how all of that came about if I caused any confusion, because it is, it's hard to follow all that.
That sounds like a great idea. Any questions for Mr. Pepin?
I have a question. Was there any explanation for the pocket veto?
Formally, no, but Chief Justice Bacon, maybe you want to address that, Chief Justice.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The explanation was purely political. It was not an objection to the concept, but the governor felt that it would be, well, phrases unpalatable given her reelection race in November, and she was concerned about that, what that message would be like, you essentially used against her. So it was a political calculation in that sense, but not a philosophical objection at all. And in fact, she has many times said if this bill comes back to her, she will sign it. Lots of things have to happen in a line again, but that's what we've been told.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Dean, I want to ask Artie a clarification. I don't know. He gave a lot of information.
Yes.
Did you highlight what the ultimate pay raise was for magistrate court judges because of these machinations?
Yes, Chief. The 7% took the magistrate judges a little over 105,000. They were at about 98,000 before. But because of the veto, they're actually at 116,500. Had the governor not vetoed, well, had she vetoed only the decoupling of the magistrates and the justice had gone to 205, the magistrates would be at 130, 131, something like that. And the Supreme Court had meetings with magistrates throughout the process, beginning early last year, to talk about why we were going to pursue taking the magistrates out of the statute, because to significantly increase compensation for the non-magistrate judges, because we have demonstrable challenges in recruitment and retention, of all levels of those judges, but specifically in district court, very challenged. We needed to raise pay, to seek significant increases in pay. We did not have those problems in recruiting magistrates or in them running for reelection. And from experience, we knew legislators would not look very favorably on raising magistrate judge pay to 116,000 or 130,000 or anything like that. I was surprised that they went to 105, but that's a legislative judgment. That's good. That's what decoupling would do. It would allow the legislature just to set magistrate pay at whatever they think is appropriate. They can leave it at 105. And I believe the magistrates are compensated. There's a discussion about why the magistrate should be decoupled in the 2021 report from the commission. The magistrates, to the extent they would answer questions in all of these meetings, and they answered them frequently, said that's fine with us. 105 would be great. We're actually fine at 97. Everything's great. We understand that you will have challenges raising district judge pay to 165,000 if we keep the current statute. So while we don't, not particularly feel great about it, that's fine with us. We understand. I expect that'll be their approach. Now that they're paid 116.5, they'll probably say, yeah, if the commission recommends decoupling, I wouldn't expect there to be significant pushback from the magistrates. I have a feeling that the Supreme Court's going to ultimately approve legislative initiatives that we advance that include taking the magistrates out of the statute again, as we pursue setting justice pay again at the federal magistrate level. But it didn't upset the magistrates that they got raised to 116.5, but it certainly wasn't the result anybody either from the courts or from the legislature, or I suspect from the executive intended, but that's the outcome of what happened.
Thanks, that's helpful. Other comments or questions before we move to our next agenda item? Okay, next up, agenda item number 3, proposed statutory proposals regarding judicial compensation. Again, Mr. Pepin, it's you.
Yes, you'll find that I've tried to make your life easier by doing my job as staff. Although if you find I talk too much, just cut me off.
Oh, I appreciate the assistance very much. Thank you. Anything that makes my life easier is great.
There are really 3 areas that I suggest, based on the commission's past interests, would be of interest to this commission. One is that, well, you want to make a recommendation about judicial pay. And obviously that's job 1. I believe the Supreme Court intends to pursue a statutory change that would mirror what you saw in Senate Bill 2, setting justice pay at the level of federal magistrates and having the statute work its magic and on down the line until we got to magistrate judges, at which point the other proposal would be, as in Senate Bill 2, to remove the magistrates and have the language be adopted along the language in Senate Bill 2. The legislature will set their salaries separately. That is one statutory proposal that you may be interested in. If not, you want to propose something about why you want to target pay where it is. And you have, the commission has talked about what justices need to get paid, or most recently, the commission focused on district judges because that's where the most acute problems with recruitment and retention have occurred. Anyway, that's the first job. The second part of any legislative proposal would be affecting retirement. Normally, well, I would suggest that the large infusion of funds into the judicial retirement account is a big thing, and we really don't know how that's going to affect the fund until we go through fiscal year 23. So at this time next year, we'll have a better idea how well off or not, how much improvement that fund has made. The retirement fund for the magistrates, we did not propose the movement of the magistrates to PERA. It was very late in the session when it occurred. We really didn't have a chance, the AOC, the courts, a chance to say, how that would affect the magistrates. My initial reaction, and having looked at it since, is that would really be a good thing for them. But I'm not sure they believe that. So you could ask me to analyze whether any kind of recommendation along those lines makes sense. That is, whether the commission wants to. And I could give you a rundown of pros and cons, and you could decide if you wanted to recommend any such thing. But that's really where we're at. There's other problems with retirement funding. There's a fee that funds retirement that probably is not a good thing. Given the emphasis on compensation, I think our approach, my approach anyway, has been, let's get salaries where they need to be. If you can get the statutory change done, you really won't have to worry about salaries. And then you can work on the margins of funding retirement so that it gets more fundamentally sound in terms of the retirement. Constitutionally, the legislature is always going to have to pay the retirement amounts. I don't think they can get out of that. And the funds, because they are very small, it could be fixed, not painlessly, but a lot easier than compensation and other structural problems that the committee might want to address first. So it depends on where you want to go, Dean, you and the commission. If you want me to look into anything else, I'd be happy to do so. There's commission reports going back to 2004, I think, on our website. And you can see the wanderings of recommendations that have come and gone. Compensation is always primary. And if you're going to focus on that, it's a big ask, but having gotten Senate Bill 2 through last year, seems like the time to do it while revenues can support it. It's not that much money. Even taking the increase from where the judges are now to where that statutory change would take them, it's about $3.5 million a year. We're talking about an $8 billion budget, right? State budget. So it's really not a lot of money. And my job is to write up draft for you reasons why that's a good idea or why it's really necessary and important to do. I will do my best to do that if that's what you decide. So those are the statutory proposals that you might want to consider.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like there's an initial question of whether we want to focus on compensation and table retirement issues for now, or tackle both simultaneously, if that's what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Pepin. Thoughts on that initial issue, and then maybe we can tackle the specifics of each, or really focus on the compensation issue and approaches to that. Also, I'm under the weather, which is why I sound a little bit like a frog, sorry. Questions about or thoughts about retirement, tackling retirement this year?
So
Yes.
tackling retirement is only tackling funding the retirement plan. Is that right? I mean, we're not talking about benefits.
Madam Chair, members, yes, we haven't thought about, well, we haven't proposed to change benefits. The judges wouldn't mind if you increase their benefits, but I have told them, if you fight the war on too many fronts, you end up losing on all fronts. Maybe it's best to focus your energies. But yes, you could talk about increasing or decreasing, if you thought it was right, service credit, things like that. And I know that Chief Justice Bacon could tell you why the current service credit number is too low. And those are good thoughts, but that's probably, I would suggest it'd be something you defer on, but you can recommend whatever you want, but yes.
Yes, Mr. Ortiz.
Yeah, my initial thoughts are, although they're not in stone, is that maybe given the circumstances that we are in now, that we focus on the compensation and trying to get Senate Bill 2 or something like it passed in this session, and then go on to other things later. Although, I could support it if others thought that it was important to do the funding and other things But as I looked at it, there was overwhelming support for Senate Bill 2. It passed 36-4 in the Senate and 58-6 in the House. And with the longer session coming up, I recall seeing the governor's public pronouncements through her spokespeople saying, let's look at it in the next session. And so I think the time is ripe to put on a full court press for Senate Bill 2 or something like it.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Other thoughts?
I have a question on compensation. Are we talking about does our court staff and other court employees part of the statutory structure, or is that totally separate?
I could answer that, Madam Chair. The statutory provision 34-1-9 only addresses judge pay. Employees, which is everybody else, not the elected folks, the employees like me, we're dealt with completely separately. So that's why it only costs $3.5 million to raise all their salaries 17%. It only affects justices, Court of Appeals judges, district court judges, and the judges of the Metropolitan Court, if you make the statutory change to remove the magistrates. If you don't change the statute, then it also affects magistrates.
Thank you. Mr. Flores?
Yeah, I'm just wondering is there any issue with court staff pay or law clerks? And I mean, where are we at with that?
Madam Chair, we are undertaking an effort to significantly increase salaries for staff. I'm trying to get our budget committee, our internal budget committee, to approve a recommendation that would increase staff 10% more than any general raise state employees get, because our employees are behind employees in the executive by at least 10%. The legislature recognized that argument last year to the extent they provided appropriations for the judiciary to get a 2% increase on top of the 7% that all other state employees got. So that 2% helps, but we're still 10% behind. And we have a lot of data to back that up. So that's a different issue. We don't pay judges and staff the same in the way the funds are appropriated or statutorily. And that makes good sense. They're constitutional officers elected and we are not. So, but yes, we are, Mr. Flores, we are working. I expect to be working very hard to push further increased compensation. There'll be some, very likely there'll be some kind of an increase for everybody, all state employees, and they lump us in there, us being the judicial employees. Something on top of that to try to help us catch up to our competitive market, which is of course executive agencies, which are 10 times larger than we are, and take all of our employees because they pay 10% more.
Representative Eli?
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, I like the idea of focusing on just the compensation and not retirement, at least for now. I would like, if I could, to work with Artie on looking at Senate Bill 2, just to see what, if any, changes could be made to that to make it better, or some slight modifications for a variety of reasons. And so what I'd like to do is, if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to talk to Artie offline at some point and just, work through Senate Bill 2 and see what can be done to improve that bill, rather than simply running Senate Bill 2 again. I would just as soon do some modifications right now.
Thank you. Any feedback or discussion on that? Yes, Mr. Pepin?
Madam Chair, I should let the committee know, because some of you are new. We work very closely with PERA, and PERA has the big fund like that state employees are in, but also it has the judicial retirement account, the magistrate, they've got all of it. And on our request, they will run scenarios. If I say, what if we get the legislature to put $20 million in, what will it do for us? And they run an analysis so we can show legislators the beneficial impact of doing such a thing. So I'd be happy, if the commission wants me to work with Representative Eli on whatever may benefit the two retirement funds, the JRA and the MRA, and we can get analyses turned around fairly quickly by PERA on actuaries actually telling us what the impact of these changes would be instead of me guessing, which sometimes is a good idea, but not usually.
Thank you. So maybe at this point, it's worth entertaining a motion to focus on compensation this year. And then we can move to the next agenda item, which seems might inform what we might decide under agenda item number 5, which are our recommendations. Is someone willing to make a motion about focusing on compensation as opposed to retirement this year?
Sure, I'll make that motion. That
Is
we
there a
focus on
second?
compensation.
All in favor, show of hands. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. And I think to flesh out what we want to do in terms of our recommendations, it looks like Mr. Pepin is prepared to discuss data considerations submitted for the 2022 report commission recommendations. Mr. Pepin?
So, Madam Chair, a couple of data points that would be of relevance, I think, to your focus on compensation. One is the National Center for State Courts tracks judicial salaries nationwide and in the territories and possessions and whatever else we have out there with court systems. And they update the report twice a year, once in January and once in July. We don't have the updates yet for July, but I can tell you that when we get them, other states will have moved compensation. Right now, the success that occurred last year with the increase, 17% increase, puts our judges in the middle or the lower middle of the rankings. So very soon, I expect to be able to report to the commission exactly where the judges are now. That's of interest, but it's not really something that moves the needle with legislators because they don't really care what judges get paid in New York or Alabama. We do look at the Western states, the states we might be adjacent to, but really, we don't consider that the competitive market for judges that we need to look at for salaries. What Senate Bill 2 focused on was what we pay, what federal judges are paid, and federal magistrates get 85% of what federal judges do, because anytime there's a vacancy in the federal system, we lose a judge generally from the state court system. And part of that is pay. Even the magistrates themselves are not Article 3 judges. They do have 8-year terms and they're often renewed. And so we will easily lose a district court judge, for example, to a magistrate judgeship. Doesn't mean those jobs are that much better, but even right now, district judges are paid $165 and those federal magistrates are paid $205. It's a big gap for people who might want their kids to go to college and things like that. So there's a lot of data about, for salary reasons, just in terms of the competitive market. We also look at the surveys that are done by the Bar Association, and I provide that data. What do partners make? What do solo practitioners make? What do government lawyers make? And what are they paid compared to what we're paying our justices and judges? You'll see a page in the 2021 report that shows the salaries of a whole number of state and local officials. And your Chief Justice is paid surprisingly low compared to county officials, a number of state officials. And while we don't compete for those same people, right, because we're in a lawyer business, so they're not all lawyers, it does tend to demonstrate to those who have to vote for compensation increases that we're not where we need to be in terms of what we're paying highly qualified justices and judges. So I would, if you want, what we usually do at this point, I take your recommendation, and I guess I should ask if you want to focus on, as Senate Bill 2 did, a legislative change that would set the salaries forward now and forward based on federal magistrate pay. And I can write that up and provide you with a draft of data like comparative salaries in the state, all those things that I can find that show where we are relative to our region, mostly relative to the state, and obviously in competition with compensation for federal judges. See if that is what the committee wants. If you want something more, then obviously the draft goes on. It's up to you. It's your report. And then, maybe a small section that says, while there are things that should be addressed with regard to retirement, the commission feels it's time to focus on compensation. And if we achieve that goal, we will address retirement in due course, something like that.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Wolf.
Well, I certainly am in favor of tying it to the federal magistrates' salaries and would certainly support that. But I have heard raised questions about the generosity of judicial retirement and benefits and how that compares with other states. I don't know. I mean, I understand that would not be necessarily something we would want to focus on, but I have heard questions about that and wondered if it has been addressed in previous reports. I know it's not addressed in this report.
Madam Chair, the answer is definitely it has. In the past, I'm talking more than 10 years ago, it was fair to say there was a fairly generous retirement provisions for judges. Judges could retire at 75% of their last salary after 15 years. That's pretty good, although not unusual. That's not out of line with other states. Now, those same judges would have to serve a little over 23 years to get a 75% retirement, which is a lot longer. And when you think about, okay, the constitutional minimum age is 35, but many judges don't come in when they're 35. You're on the bench a long time. The real challenge there is trying to recruit people who have been around the block a few times, tried a bunch of cases, know something about anything other than criminal law. Trying to attract those people when they're 50 or so. The retirement provisions now can be a deterrent for those folks who might want to do that. If we move the salary up, that helps. That's the main driver that really helps. But it would also help we had some provisions in legislative proposals last year to accelerate the accumulation of service credit for the first 10 years of service, so that between age 50 and 60, if you came on at 50, you'd earn, say, 40%, and after that, reduce it down to 3.5%, something like that. And there's reasons why that makes good sense. I am not unhappy if you want me to work on talking about retirement and where we sit. And the National Center did a big survey on judicial retirement because it's been, I think 2013 was the last one. We don't have the results yet, but I will have them soon, I hope. And I can tell you exactly how we compare to other states. What I will tell you is we are at best in the low middle in terms of how many years you have to serve, what you get to retire at, what percentage you retire at, and what the actual benefits are that accrue with retirement. And if it's helpful to have that data on hand, I will do so, because there may be a perception that we're going to pay you all this money and you're on the path to a golden parachute, and that's just not true. At one time, there was more gold in the parachute, but now at best, it's a regular old parachute, I think.
Representative Eli?
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, two things. One, I do think Artie should be looking into that, but only because if the issue is raised in a legislative hearing, he can have, a short response saying, this isn't true for these reasons, and explain that. And to go back to the former question, I do like the idea of tying it, because otherwise frankly, I had the same argument on minimum wage. If we tied it to something that was objective like the CPI, then it doesn't become a political football year after year after year, and provide some predictability for everybody in the system, the budgeteers, the judges, the public, so they know exactly what to expect. I just like that much better. So we just don't have to revisit it over and over again. So I like Senate Bill 2 for that reason, that it does make that tie. And so I would encourage the committee to support that approach. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Pepin?
And Madam Chair, I don't recall at this point, because it was a while since that report was issued, but it's a fact that, and we did use this fact in the legislative session. The federal magistrate pay, federal judge pay, over the last 20 years has not leaped, leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. It's pretty much kept exactly with inflation, roughly 2% a year increases in the federal magistrate pay. So a concern that it's somehow going to, send them off into the stratosphere is probably not well founded. Now, what the feds do, because inflation is running, depends on who you want to listen to, 6 to 9%. It's very high. Maybe they'll go up 6%. I don't know, but that's because otherwise you're going backwards, right, in your purchasing power. So I did do that analysis. It may be in last year's report. Maybe we'll incorporate something like that in this year's report, because we don't want folks to think this is a way to get the judges somehow on a runaway train to excessive pay.
Thank you. It sounds like there's some suggestion that we make this year's recommendation based on last year's SB2, and that Representative Eli will assist with some of that offline. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Carrie, can I just ask a quick question? Is it all right?
Sure.
We're talking about indexing it to the magistrate pay every year as opposed to a single pay raise. Is that the idea? And then whatever happened with I was reading about this proposed constitutional amendment in the last report. Is that sort of dead in the water, or what happened with that?
I was going to mention that, Mr. Flores, because I know that you all have read the report, and that's the last thing in last year's report. We've been trying to get at this some different ways to try to get judicial pay so that we don't have to talk about it anymore, set it somehow outside the political legislative process. And last year's recommendation was run a constitutional amendment to have judges paid whatever the commission says. And this is not these commissions exist. So if they said pay the judges $150,000, that's what you pay them. In the course of going through the legislative session, the challenges of a constitutional amendment are harder than judicial salaries, than a statutory change, unless you want to avoid the governor, because obviously the governor can't stop a constitutional amendment. And our sponsors, and then in this case, the sponsor was Senator Cervantes, very strongly felt statutory provision made the most sense, and it achieved what we wanted, which is we don't have to talk about why the judges should get paid this or that or the other thing. It's already set by statute, and that's our main objective. And that would have been the objective of having an independent constitutional body. You may know that there have been constitutional amendment proposals, including in this year's session, to pay elected officials, statewide elected officials, through a commission such as the one we proposed for judges. That would get legislators paid, along with the attorney general, all the people who are paid statewide, the governor. It's not that many people, actually. I think in the course of going through this legislative session and running Senate Bill 2 and having the success with at least getting that to the governor and her statements, which indicate to us she'd be willing to sign it if we could pass it again, we probably would recommend pursuing the statutory angle and not the constitutional amendment, not to mention, if we'd done the constitutional amendment in January, be on the ballot this November. Anytime you do a constitutional amendment, it has to wait till, in this case, we'd have to wait till 2024. So if we decided that really was a better way to go, it could be in the 24 session for the November 24 election.
Thank you.
So I would still entertain a motion, and then we can have more discussion if it's seconded, unless the committee would like to take this a different direction.
I will move that at least the draft report supports the principles behind Senate Bill 2 with any additional improvements that, is it Senator Eli?
Maybe someday.
No, you don't want to put me in the Senate.
Okay. Representative Eli can work on with Artie
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Is there a second?
I second
Oh.
that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Okay, further discussion. Guidance that we might want to provide to Mr. Peppin as he works on this draft. Yes, Mr. Flores.
I haven't figured out how to raise my hand on this thing, so I'm doing it the old fashioned way.
That works. I like that.
It seems to me that on magistrate pay, are we really competing for the same pool of applicants? Because, is it really going to help with linking Chief Justice pay to magistrate pay when we're losing judges at the district court level to the federal court? Does that make sense? And in other words, is that enough? Is that actually going to address the issue where district judges around the state are going to the federal courts?
Responses, Mr. Peppin?
I heard two things there, but I'll address them both. We want to remove the state magistrate judges from the statute so they don't get paid more when the other judges move up, and the legislature can set their salary at whatever they think it should be. With regard to tying the justice pay to the federal magistrate pay, we believe, and this also includes a lot of conversation with existing district court judges, that if you tie the justices to the federal magistrates, which today would raise their pay to 185, they just got raised to 161 or so. They were at 150. That many of them would stay on the bench who had considered leaving. And we believe it would make it easier for a lot of people who are, those commissions, the nominating commissions, solicit candidates for district court judgeships. And one reason why the answer is no too often is I can't afford the pay cut. This level of pay, it doesn't eliminate that issue, but it certainly makes it much easier to overcome if you're paying the district court judges 185 instead of 150. So I can't say, Mr. Flores, that it's a guarantee, and there's still a gap, obviously, between the state and the federal, but the gap is much narrower if we do the statutory change. And we believe that would make a significant difference because of all the conversations the nominating commissions have with candidates and the conversations with our existing judges. And I'm sure the Chief Justice would confirm that if you asked her to address it, because she's responsible for many of those nominating commissions, and the dean will have the joy of serving on those as well going forward.
Yeah, Mr. Flores, your question is appropriate. We talked about, should we tie it to federal district court pay? And there's just a political calculation in it and what's palatable to the legislature. And so the jump it seems that the gap that jump would be too large. And so that's the calculus that we engage in all of the time of how far can we push. I'm very hopeful that it would at least increase the applicant pool. Dean Carey and I are going to Carlsbad next week, and it went from 4 applicants to 2 over the course of a week. And there's lots of different calculus in there. The other significant difference for district court judges is that they have to run for office, and judges typically aren't terribly well equipped to do that. We're having conversations in the judiciary about how to make that not necessarily easier, but more palatable. But the combination of really suppressed pay coupled with you have to run a campaign, we know is the death knell to applicants when magistrate positions open. Mark Baker, who is the chair of the magistrate selection committee, they have on average 80 applicants for 1 magistrate position. And then we have district court positions and we get 2, maybe 1 applicant. So it's a significant step in the right direction. But that's kind of the calculus is, how far can we push the legislature, and getting to the pay of district court judges in our estimate was too far. I'm sure Representative Eli could add to that, but it's a absolutely fair question.
Yeah, I really can't add to that. Hey, I think that's right. I get that problem.
Other discussion regarding our proposal on the table or motions? Yes, Mr. Flores.
Yeah, I mean, my gut sense is that it seems to me like the important thing is that it's linked, it's indexed to something that's automatic, and that the judiciary is not, begging the legislature for funding every year, and the legislature can't, you don't go through these 10-year droughts of no pay increases. The legislature can't just starve the courts of funding, and so I definitely like the idea of linking it to something, either magistrate pay or as a proxy for inflation or whatever, but something that's automatic and that gets rid of this whole process.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Other comments, discussion? Are we ready to vote on the motion? So the motion on the floor, Mr. Ortiz, I hope I can capture this fairly well, but it is to have our recommendation for this year, or the draft recommendation, mirror SB2 with some input from Representative Eli. Is that a fair capture of your motion, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you all. So at this point, I think our next task is to schedule our draft and final report deadlines. Mr. Pepin.
Madam Chair,
yes.
your deadline, your drop dead date is December 1st. That's what's in the statute. The commission generally wants to be well ahead of December 1st. We probably would have met earlier, except, it's a new commission. We had a number of appointments that had to be made. But you tell me when you want a draft, and I will get that draft to you. I suspect you'll have another meeting to work over the draft, and then I'll redraft. And then hopefully that second round doesn't take that long and you get what you want. I would suggest that mid-September would probably be a fine target, unless you want it. If you want it earlier, I'll put it higher up in the priority list, but it won't be that hard to write because a lot of work has been done on Senate Bill 2. So if you want it earlier, that's fine, but we have to submit budgets to the legislature, to DFA and LFC, September 1, and I'll be spending a lot of August on budgets.
Well, this is a heavy lift for you, Mr. Pepin. So I'd like feedback from the commission, but mid-September sounds very reasonable to me. I'm seeing some agreement. Okay, so mid-September, do we want a date or to just say mid-September, Mr. Pepin? September 15th, September 22nd?
September 15th would work fine. That's a Thursday, I guess. Not that it matters what day of the week it is, but.
You want a Friday, September 16th?
Sure.
Great.
Because the 15th is my wife's birthday, so I probably shouldn't be working that day.
You shouldn't be drafting it on the 15th, Artie.
Well, that is also quite true. But I am a licensed attorney, so I'm only allowed to do things on deadline,
And we should probably have another meeting after we receive that draft recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Pepin, for drafting it. Should we work with Ms. Ebler to schedule the follow-up meeting?
Yes, Karen is available to you. I will work around your schedule, although there's probably some hard dates that I'm unavailable, but it's, you're all have busy schedules. You could decide on a tentative date now. She could send out one of those monkey surveys, whatever they're called, and see which dates you can all align on or whatever you want, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any other business the commission would like to address today? I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. A second? All
Second.
right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
I look forward to working with all of you. Have a great day.
You too.